Dentistry and General Radio Network presents
the Independent Dental Practice Podcast with Dr. Sonny Spera. In this episode,
how do you enhance the culture that different departments communicate to each other?
Number one, go through orientation and training. We hire somebody on a Friday, they're on the phones on Monday morning. At the end of every day for the first 2 weeks, either the practice manager or the dentist or somebody should meet with that new employee and walk through that day. The second thing, regular staff meetings on a monthly basis. You only have a monthly meeting when there's a problem, but the purpose of the staff meeting is so you don't have problems. So it really has to do with communication. I say to the staff member, if you could wave your magic wand, what is the number one thing you want from your doctor? And they would say, feedback, performance review. They want to know how they're doing, because dentists as a group are not very good at giving compliments, and that's the perfectionist. But staff need communication. They need feedback.
Jennifer de St. George is building a referral-based practice, Part 1.
Welcome to the Independent Dental Practice Podcast, Dr. Sonny Spera. Today, I am absolutely humbled and honored to have the guest that we have. This was a driving force when I was a young practice owner on my own. I'll never forget it. The practice management scene at that time, there were not a lot of speakers, there was not a lot of information, but there were two names that really everybody referred to, and what we're going to talk about today, highly recommended them. It was Linda Miles and it was Jennifer de St. George. So my team, a couple of my office managers and myself were at the Yankee, and they were like, oh, we went to a lecture. It was Jenny. I was like, excuse me? Oh, she's a British lady. She was great. She was very direct to the point. I was like, Jennifer de St. George? And I was so overwhelmed, happy, because she, and I told her this off air, had a tremendous impact on my life and my practice when I first started. And I was thirsty for it, but I was so glad I found her early. The no-nonsense approach, the direct approach really worked, and it was refreshing. And it was also refreshing to hear it from a woman. Sorry, but the male-dominated dental field at the time, you didn't hear a lot of female speakers that were authority figures. You could hear maybe there was some in this tactic in this area. Bottom line, I'm going to be a fan a lot of the show, so please forgive me, okay? All right, so Jennifer de St. George is passionate about providing dentists and their teams her practical tools and techniques to enhance the management of their practice. Her emphasis is always on how to, 1, elevate and enhance communication between doctors and patients, 2, hire and maintain a supportive team, and 3, increase management protocols and systems to lower stress, run on time, and increase productivity and cash flow. Now, everybody wants to do those, right? She provides structure and tools and tips on how to build a referral practice in today's hectic world of the social media, website, impact, SEO, marketing, third-party challenges, government schemes, you name it. Her reputation for telling it like it is, which I've already said, as well as having an opinion on everything, which I didn't say, ensures you are in for a content, drive, and entertaining program. So please welcome Jennifer de St. George to the program. Jennifer, thanks for being here.
Sonny, it's an absolute honor and pleasure, and thank you for your kind words. As I said to you off air, providing the information is one thing. Finding people in the audience who get so motivated they go back and actually implement it. And as we got to know each other a little bit more before we started the recording, you really have walked your talk. You and your staff took what you heard from me, and just talking to you, you have actually, you've just done it. Congratulations.
Thank you. I remember you saying that. I remember you making that point very specifically. And I think I'm going to put a number on it. I think it was in the single digits of the percent of people who will walk away from a lecture, which was what it was at the time, a full day lecture, and literally implement it. And I remember, and from that day on, I remember that was a absolute must for me, was to take what I learned. And I just took up at the Yankee, like you were at, I took a class from a friend of mine. He talked about composites. And I came home, there's 3 things I'm doing differently now. I've been doing this for 35 years. Hey, if you can't learn, here's my answer to you. Get the hell out of the profession. But to learn it and then to implement it, you're right. But you got to do it. To me, you got to do it. That's the fun and exciting part. That's the part that you want to wake up the next day and learn from. But so I do remember you saying that specifically, and that has stuck with me to this day. So I can't thank you enough again.
Thank you. And to be a little bit more brutal, I'm on record for saying, and I said it at the Yankee a couple of weeks ago, as I finish with an audience, I say, now, if you take my notes and go home and put them in a drawer and never look at them again, I will come and kill you, because you've just wasted your time, your money, and my time.
Yeah.
And,
Well, that's pretty direct.
I'm guilty of having done that, so I can say that with empathy.
Yeah, I have done that on occasions, but usually it's because it's a subject that just either I'm completely disinterested in, or the manner in which it was given was not great. But I still think you can find something. And if nothing else, I love to go in person and meet other clinicians and other doctors, other team members, and there's always something you can learn or pick up from indirectly. And sometimes I'm rude. Sometimes I'm like, hey, we do it like this in our office. And then the person leans over, yeah, that's something that we do. Hey, how do you find that works with you? But the interaction is priceless. I really feel it. And that's missing the webinars. That's just not happening.
Yeah.
That's for the birds. So our topic today, how to build a referral-based practice. Now, being the podcast, independent dental practice, we're wide open, right? So you don't have to be strictly fee-for-service. You don't have to be strictly out of network. You don't have to be strictly in network, and it doesn't matter. But how do you build that referral-based practice? So please, Jennifer, take it away.
I think I created a program years ago, and I called it Creating a Patient-Centered Practice. And really that choice of title, way before people thought about it, is that you do it one patient at a time. And I created a list of 20 items, and I'll be happy to share it with the audience. I created what I perceive, Jenny's perception, of the 20 things that a patient uses to judge a dental practice, either what they hear about them before they walk in, or if the reputation is not that good, they don't walk in, or when they walk in, maybe having heard good things, their little eyes. And number one has always been a painless injection. And it was interesting because when I was speaking at the Yankee a couple of weeks ago, Stanley Malamode, he said, Jenny, every program I give around the world, I have a slide of you with that quote. And he said, I've been doing it for 40 years. Perhaps I should update the photograph. So I sent him an updated photograph, but I think, slide 23. Jenny D. St. George says, it's a painless injection. Now, I know, and you can help me, there are new devices and techniques and instruments that maybe it can help. But if you can, as a dentist, give a painless injection, I think that's to die for. I say to the doctors in the audience, how do you know you've given a painless injection? And the answer goes from, the patient looks at me and says, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, or some combination. And I said, no, wrong answer, guys. The answer to, do you give a painless injection, is when the patient says, okay, doc, I'm ready. Let's get it over with. And you say, but I've already given it to you.
We're done. But I think that's a very important thing. And I've only ever taken one course. And it's funny you brought that up, but Dr. Jeffrey Hughes taught this for years. And he was the doc that we just talked on the composites. I was just saying at Boston. And to this day, I've learned it. I learned it with my partner, and we've tried to teach all the docs in our practice how and why, and the science behind it. And it's funny when a patient will ask me, why did you ask me to do this? Why did you ask me? Why were you doing this? And then I try to explain a little bit of the science behind it. And especially nurses, they're extremely fascinated because they obviously give injections. And I know I just had blood drawn the other day. I'm looking away. I don't want to look at it. But the point is, it's a treasured feat to be able to do that.
Funny you mentioned Jeffrey Hughes, because he's been a big fan of mine for years, and he says that I was very instrumental in getting him on the right track. I actually was in Stanford Hospital today getting 2 different injections. And historically, I've always thought physicians do not do as good a job as dentists.
Well, yeah.
because I think dentistry is elective, and what is it, 62% of dentistry is elective. Whereas if you're in a hospital, so you've got a broken leg, what are you going to do? But I did notice that the technique with both of the providers this morning was for physicians was the best I've ever had. So I think they're beginning to change their technique.
Maybe they've been to a few courses
Maybe they made a few courses.
and are implementing. I agree with you. I think that's a huge hallmark. And to me, is the doctor nice and does the doctor hurt me? I think those are always two common veins that I think, and I think it's oversimplifying, but I think it's just factually true.
I don't think it is, because my number two after a painless injection, my number two is, does it hurt? And that could be anything. That could be the hygienist is being rough. That could be the nurse.
Yeah, assistant with a suction jabs your cheek. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
And
Happened
number
today.
three is the staff are kind, they're professional, they're caring, they make me feel wonderful, whatever it is, staff. And number four is running on time. And those are my top four. And my bottom two, number 19 is location, because if you're running a referral practice, you could be behind the supermarket and they'll find you. And number 20 is money, because if they have bought into you and your reputation and your service, they've already bought into the fee. So to me, money is number 20 on the list as to why you choose a dentist.
So how does one overcome, or how does one accentuate the third point, which was the staff or the team is friendly, nice, kind, caring, loving, warm, all those things. How does one get into that?
I most probably do a day and a half if I put all my different half-day programs together on staff. And if I was to sum up, I was in Dubai this February, and it's the fifth time I've spoken in Dubai in the last couple of years. And this year at AEDC, which is the largest dental meeting in the world, they had me do 4 programs, and 2 were masterclass. And one of the masterclasses, I thought, I'm going to teach how to create good staff. Now, I realize that in Dubai, I'm in a male-dominated
Right.
environment, and I'm a pretty assertive woman who's got strong opinions. I was actually surprised when the committee accepted my topic. I thought they would maybe be a little apprehensive. And I called it, and I think this will answer your question, Sonny. I called it, and it just came to me, Doctor, are you hiring staff or building a team? And I think that says it all. And I think most dentists hire staff and they don't take the time to work out what they really need from a team and then go and look. For instance, if you have a dentist who's a poor communicator, I remember many years ago, a Japanese dentist came to one of my programs. He was very Japanese, very Asian, very quiet, didn't smile, hardly spoke, almost barely got his eyes up from the carpet. But he had 6 wonderful staff members with him who were everything that he was not. So I'm sure the kids never noticed that he didn't speak because he had 6 gregarious staff. So what he did is he hired to his limitations, not his strengths. His limitation was being a poor communicator. So what he did, and I'm sure it maybe made him feel uncomfortable, whether he did it consciously or unconsciously, he hired the exact opposite of his personality, and the two together with his clinical expertise and their making the patients feel comfortable, it was a perfect match.
All right, let me ask you this. Let me give you this scenario. How about the different departments within the office? So you got your hygiene department, we'll call your business office, and we'll say your clinical team. So your assistants, sterilization, floaters, whatever words you want to use there, your hygienist techs, your x-ray techs, and then you have your business administration, albeit your secretary, albeit your business admin, phone answering, insurance adjuster, treatment coordinator. How do you develop the culture, or how do you enhance the culture? Let's say, how do you create the culture that those 3 departments communicate to each other?
First of all, I'd like to congratulate you on, I was just waiting for it, and you did me proud because you didn't mention it. When you went through all the job titles for the administrative, you did not say receptionist, because if you go and write an ad for a receptionist, that's exactly what you're going to get. As far as administrative staff, I have said this for decades. I do not put clinical staff in the administrative role. I look for non-clinical staff, non-dental staff. So I go to banks, number one, restaurants, airline flight attendants.
Oh, this is for identifying talent to hire.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
The thing with the communication is I read a survey recently that said that in the States, 75% of applicants who are hired were the last one interviewed. And I've always thought
Recency bias. Yeah.
I always thought dentists are very guilty about this. They start off in high spirits, and after about the 15th person who does not meet their standards, and they're getting desperate because they think better get a warm body in than not have anybody. And if the next person walks in with 2 arms and 2 legs, they're hired. And it's very hard for a dentist to hold out for, I don't want to say quality, let's just say for the right person.
Yeah. Yeah. We could say quality in that person's mind.
So I sum up the team: hire for longevity, manage for harmony, and I'm still looking for the 3 or 4 words, but basically the third one is when the shit hits the fan, address it right there. Don't put it off. And so many dentists will delay. So the answer to your question is to hire people who meet your standards initially. And I think too much hiring is done, especially now when hiring is such a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I'm suggesting, and I don't know whether you've done it or not, but in the 70s, when I was running Edmonds practice, we also had a problem with staff. We were in a small community like you are, and finding staff was really tough. And so I ran 2 crews. I ran a morning crew and an afternoon crew. And the reason I could do that was because my systems were so strong and the communication was so strong between the different divisions. And when the afternoon crew came in, it took them about 5 minutes to get caught up with the morning crew. And after COVID, the figure I read the other day on Google is only 21% of Americans are committed to work full time. You'll notice that that Trump and the government now, and Facebook is doing it, they're saying you've got to come into the office. People don't want to go in anymore. They're spoiled. And so I think to break it into, say, part-time, because what people want is that part-time. They want the ability to take the kids to the dentist and all those things you and I know. So if there are any listeners who are having a problem finding full-time staff, because the pool now is very small, that you think about maybe having a morning crew and an afternoon crew. That can be clinical, admin. It's not going to be hygiene because that's going to be a full day. But you will attract quality people who say, I could work in the mornings because I have my afternoons off, or vice versa.
So how do you, okay, so you're talking about hiring or locating, finding the right people for these positions. Now you've hired them. How do you enhance the communication amongst the departments so that you do have, because you said harmony. You used the word harmony, and harmony happens, I think, when everybody's getting along or everybody's working together and everybody's understanding that we have personal differences. But if we have the same drive to the core of what we're doing, the same leadership point, then I think we can get there. But what do you recommend for something like that?
I'll give you 2 specific perspectives. Number one, and it drives me crazy because we don't do it in dentistry, but I truly understand why. If you were hired by Apple or Facebook or Google, I will guarantee they would not put you on the phones on day one and throw you to the wolves. You'd go through orientation and training, you'd read manuals, you'd watch videos, you would shadow somebody who's been doing it. And after a day to a week, whatever their procedure is, you would then, with confidence, and we don't do that, particularly in the administrative area. We hire somebody on a Friday, they're on the phones on Monday morning. We have no idea what they're going to say. They're going to bring whatever they brought from their last practice. And if it's a Jenny D. St. George practice, maybe it's going to be okay. But if it was a practice with low standards, that's now what's answering your phone.
Right,
And
but think of what you said too. You found somebody at the bank that you like, you hired them. They don't even know number two, three, four. They don't even know two numbers, right?
well, you're talking to somebody who married into dentistry. I worked on Fleet Street in London. I worked for J. Walter Thompson in New York, who at that time was the largest advertising agency in the world. When Emmett and I started his practice, which was about 6 months after he graduated from dental school, and we unlocked the door and we walked into the office on day one, he looked at me and said, quote unquote, Jenny, why don't you pick up the phone for the first couple of weeks till I find somebody who actually knows what they're doing? So you're talking to somebody who didn't even know how many teeth a patient had.
Right.
What I say to, and actually, I have a program that was put together. It's called Welcome to Dentistry, and we have 2 CDs, and it's for non-dental people. All they need to know, Sonny, is more than the patient. So all you have to do is teach them how many teeth and the difference between a removable and a fixed partial.
Mhm.
Basically, it's nothing. And so there's not enough orientation and training. And even if they are put onto the business desk on day one, at the end of every day for the first 2 weeks, either the practice manager or the dentist or somebody should meet with that new employee and walk through that day. They don't. They just get thrown out there. The second thing, and I noticed this at the Yankee a couple of weeks ago because I did a half-day program on building the team, is I asked how many had regular staff meetings on a monthly basis. 50% did and 50% did not. Now, I had an audience feedback form. I'm old school, forget the QR codes, which I used, but I have an old-fashioned piece of paper that I put on the table for every seat, and they filled it out. And I asked them to give me the top 3 things that they learned from any of my programs, because I need to know whether what
Yeah.
I'm giving is relevant to
Yeah.
them.
It's your report card. How am I doing?
Exactly. Not saying how good is the speaker 1 to 10. No, show me through my systems. And I was amazed at how many wrote, we'll now have a monthly meeting. And either they were having it every quarter or every 2 months, or the classic is we only have, actually, I tell them what the classic is. You only have it when there's a problem. And they say, I said, but the purpose of the staff meeting is so you don't have problems.
Mhm.
So their management style is reactive instead of being proactive. It's like putting
Proactive.
the burglar alarm in the house after everything in the house has been taken by the burglars, which, by the way, a next door neighbor did one day. I woke up one day to find a big alarm company wiring my next door neighbor. And I said, Bill, good to see the alarms going in because I know crime's going up. He said, oh, no, they took everything yesterday. I said, well, what are you putting in the alarm now for?
What are you watching? Yeah.
Right. So it really has to do with communication. However much we talk about building the patient referral practice, when you're talking about the team, it's communication. And I think the staff will, I know this, if I could say to the staff member, if you could wave your magic wand, doctor, what is the number one thing you want from your doctor? And they would say feedback, performance review. They want to know how they're doing because dentists as a group are not very good at giving compliments. And that's the perfectionist. I'm a recovering perfectionist. And we're not very good at giving compliments because we have such high standards. We just assume everybody's going to meet that standard. So as managers, dentists are often seen as negative because they tend to focus on what's not working rather than focus on what's working first and then slip in the correction. So I think that the ability to let the staff know how they're doing. Now, if I talk to the dentist, or I will tell them, as I did at the Yankee, I know why you don't give performance reviews because you believe a good performance review, there's an assumption there's going to be more money. And I do not think the two belong together. What a performance review is to the dentist listening to Sonny and I, a performance review, it sounds cute, but it's true. It is to make sure that the money that the staff member has been paid for the last 6 months actually has been earned. It's a review of did they deliver for the salary or the wages they were given. And I joke that I've never heard of a dentist giving an invoice to the staff member for less than quality service, but that is the point. And any additional money, whether we do it through an incentive and bonus or whatever, must not ever be tied into the performance review. But staff need communication. They need feedback.
I agree. That's one of the most difficult things we have with 7 doctors is getting some feedback and input from everyone. And I'm as guilty as the next one at times. And I may not have interactions enough where I feel like I have enough of a feel for how they're doing their job.
Okay, so let me ask you a question when you mentioned 7 doctors. So you have another problem, and that is 7 doctors speaking with one voice on key policy issues. Because nothing drives a staff member crazier to hear 6 different, well, in your case, 7, to be told 7 different ways to do one thing. So how do you solve that?
A couple things. One, we spent a lot of time communicating with the doctors on important issues and even just basic setups. Why do we have 7 burrs? Why do we have this in the operatories? Why is this an arm's length away? The clinical part, everybody, we love that, right? The dentists love that. Why are we using this bonding system? Why are we using this matrix system and stuff like that? So there's that component, but then there's also the other side of it, which is how are we communicating with each other to make sure that we have a common vein? I don't expect, like my son works with me, I don't expect him to sound exactly like me, but I do expect the gist of what he says to be very similar to what I would say. And my other partner that I spend more time with on some of the business things and stuff, it's scary how lock, stock, and barrel we're on the same page because we spend a fair amount of time on the business, not just in the business. So that's very helpful. And then it's now communicating. And in fact, one of the things we met today was our other partner, we're like, we got to get you more involved in being in the cockpit here. So that's our next step for him too. And because at some point we're going to transition some of us more gray-haired doctors and some of us younger doctors, who fits where and how do we keep our core values and our mission, intact. And I think that's essential. So what we try to do is make sure that we communicate and we share that. But when we do reviews, each person does their own review for that staff or team member, right? So you're going to get it coming from a lot of different angles. And there are going to be some differences, obviously, with 7, but I'd like to think that I don't know, the word I heard is calibrated. We're a little more calibrated how we do things.
Philosophically.
Yeah, philosophically, yes. And I also like to, implementation-wise, I don't think you're not gonna make it if you're a grumpy person. You're just not gonna make it in our group or in our culture, in our office. People have smiles on their faces,
That's hopefully because it's genuine.
Yeah.
I figured the other day that 85% of Americans do not like going to the place of employment. 85% are not happy at work. So that means only 15%, because if you love work, it really isn't work. You're just going to do what you love.
Yeah, and we have a couple team members, I can tell they're working a job, I think, but the vast majority, I think, get it, as for lack of a more fancy term, they get it.
One of the things I threw out at the Yankee, and I don't always do this, but because I had a small group and there were many more dentists than I thought there would be, which I couldn't miss the opportunity. So I asked how many dentists in the room let the staff critique them and do a performance review of the dentist from a staff member. And when I looked at the takeaway sheets on the top 3 things, I was rather touched to see several had written, some said, I'm actually going to do it. And they said, interesting perspective, let me think about it. Because if they don't, as a dentist manager, owner, get the feedback as to how they manage the staff, they're never going to improve.
You got to have honest feedback.
Exactly.
Honest, sincere feedback. Yeah, that brings up a good point. That's a great place. We're going to wrap this. This is our first episode, and we're going to record a part 2 very shortly. We're going to get in a little more details in terms of performance reviews, salary reviews, and we've talked about yearly, but keeping them separate. We're going to get in a little more detail. So, Jennifer, Jenny, as you like to be called, Thanks so much. Let's catch you on the flip side.
It was a pleasure. You are a wonderful host.
Thank you.
This has been a production of Dentistry in General Radio Network. Visit our website, dentistryingeneral.com, to join engaging clinical and business conversations, explore our dental podcasts, and stay updated on our upcoming live events.